Hello everybody, this is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and we're back with another of our 5-Minute Histories videos. And today I'm off of Druid Hill Avenue in the Upton Marble Hill neighborhood, and I'm in this lovely park called the Henry Highland Garnett Park, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Both how the park came to be and the gentleman it's named after, but have to say first a quick thanks to a researcher, Ame Pohl, for helping put this together. All right, Henry Highland Garnett was born enslaved on Maryland's eastern shore at age 9. He and his family escaped through the Underground Railroad to New York. As a boy, he worked in ship repair yards, but also got some education in schools that white abolitionists had founded in New York. As a young man, he became a minister, and in 1840, he helped found an organization called the American and Foreign Anti-Slavery Society. They based their work on the literal words of Scripture, arguing through pamphlets and speeches of the moral wrongs of slavery. Garnett became known for his fiery speeches, often pretty radical, often arguing for armed rebellion. During the Civil War, he helped recruit black New Yorkers to the Union Army, and at one point narrowly escaping lynching during what was called the New York Draft riots. New York workers, white New York workers, were rioting, protesting against being drafted into the Union Army, fighting against slavery, and fearing that black workers in the South would come up and take their jobs. They lynched a number of black New Yorkers and burned a number of buildings, and Garnett narrowly escaped that fate. After the Civil War in 1865, he became the first black American to speak before the U.S. House of Representatives. He was arguing for the passage of the 13th Amendment that would make slavery illegal in the United States. After its passage, slavery was illegal here, but it was still legal in places like Brazil and Cuba, and that's where Garnett focused his work after the Civil War. His final chapter is intertwined with Liberia. In the early 1800s, a number of folks here in the United States formed an organization called the American Colonization Society, and its mission was to send black Americans to Liberia. During its days, even among abolitionists, that was a very controversial topic with passionate people on both sides. Those who were in favor often argued that black Americans would be better off in Liberia than they would be here. Those against it, including Frederick Douglass, argued that America was being born and shaped on the backs of slave labor, and black Americans had every right to enjoy this new country that they were helping to build. Garnett at first was against the colonization movement, but then later in life switched positions and became for it. And in 1881, President James Garfield appointed him ambassador to Liberia. He moved there and then sadly died within a year of arriving. So that's the gentleman, this nationally prominent anti-slavery abolitionist figure. Now, how about the park? It was created in the 1960s. There was an umbrella group here at that time called the Henry Highland Garnet Council, made up of 30 or so smaller organizations. And in 1969, they got this lot. A school had been here and had been demolished some years before, and then worked to turn it into a park. The park was designed by a micro professor named Robert Harding, and the whole effort was led by a neighborhood leader here named Lena Boone. The sidewalks were courtesy of the city of Baltimore, and the labor that went into it came through a federal labor department program called the Neighborhood Improvement Program. And the landscaping was donated by a contractor. You can still see their name on trucks all over the city, Potts and Callahan. So the park came together, and it was quite beautiful back then. Over the years, it fell into some disrepair, but in 2016, it got a complete renovation, courtesy of the Marble Hill Community Association. And then in 2018, it got the addition of a rose garden from a new group that had formed called the Friends of Henry Highland Garnett Park. The rose garden is to pay tribute tribute to Juanita Jackson Mitchell and her husband Clarence Mitchell. Juanita, of course, the first black woman lawyer in Maryland, a civil rights champion, and Clarence, the head lobbyist for the NAACP for many years. Apparently they had a rose garden in their house, in their backyard in their house just around the corner, where they entertained people like Jackie Robinson and Eleanor Roosevelt and Lady Bird Johnson. The upkeep is done as a community effort. Even the fertilizing is done with a community effort through a program called community composting. All right, I'm going to wrap up back to Henry Highland Garnett, the man, and say one final word with him. In 1843, he delivered an address called An Address to the Slaves of the United States. It's often called The Call to Rebellion. And let me quote from that. There's a bronze plaque at the entrance to the park with this quote on it. Brethren, arise, arise, strike for your lives and liberties. Now is the day and the hour. Let every slave throughout the land do this, and the days of slavery are numbered. You cannot be more oppressed than you have been. You cannot suffer greater cruelties than you have already. Rather die free men than live to be slaves. Remember that you are 4 million. When he gave that speech, most in the audience considered it too radical to publish and distribute. But there was one man who felt otherwise who was there, and he put up his own personal money to make sure that it was published and distributed. And that man was John Brown, later of Harper's Ferry fame. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon.